if they have leftover money, they are free to spend it. They can spend it on their clothes, on their spouse's clothes, on their travel, on their vacation, on food. And the quote up here is actually from the website of a current member of the House of Representatives who isn't happy about this situation. We have some very good legislators. They have a lot of pressure on them, and they've had a difficult time pushing forward their own interests and ethics. But if you want, this is really quite interesting. Legislators are currently allowed to spend money they receive as campaign contributions on anything they want to, even personal expenses unrelated to politics or campaigning. He's put this out on his blog, on his web blog. Consequently, Utah senators and representatives have often spent the money on such items as clothing, digital cameras, car repairs. Another popular expenditure is travel costs, not only for the lawmaker, but also for his or her family members. Some have even used the funds to pay themselves or their spouse an additional salary. You may know, or you may not know this, that in Utah you can be a lobbyist and a legislator at the same time. Now, this last session, there was a symbolic attempt to reform ethics. There was a lot of pressure coming from the press, a lot of pressure coming from the public. There were some small attempts made. So, in 2009, a law was passed that prohibited lobbyists, legislators, from joining a firm. Now, but this is the way it worked. It said, okay, after you leave the legislature for 1 year, you can't be a lobbyist. But if you're lobbying for yourself, that's fine. That's not prevented. And if you want to be hired by a firm that is not a lobbying firm to lobby for them, you can do that. So if Philip Morris wanted to hire an ex-legislator to lobby for not increasing the cigarette tax, that's okay. The legislator could be hired by that kind of a firm, but could not be hired by a firm whose major, primary, sole purpose is to lobby. You get the difference? So it's a major loophole that you can still be hired as a lobbyist, just not by a lobbying firm. Now, we have a sitting legislator who's currently a lobbyist. And there's nothing to prevent that. And there's nothing to prevent trying to accept employment. And just recently, this was in the paper, that a group of lobbyists are being asked to find a job for a sitting lawmaker who's lost his work. And Paul Raleigh in the Tribune wrote this up. And the number of companies that were asked to consider hiring this person were all in the health insurance kind of business at a time when there's a lot going on in the legislature around health issues, and this person who's lost his job is sitting on committees that are dealing with health reform issues at the state. So although merit ought to determine leadership positions, sometimes this doesn't work out either, and I want to explain how this works to you. Lobbyists give money to legislators. Okay, that part's easy enough. Sometimes some legislators acquire quite a war chest. They can turn around and give that money to other legislators who may need it more than they do. Not surprisingly, sometimes the one with the war chest becomes our legislative leader in the legislature. One legislator had a bank account of over $300,000 that had accumulated. That's nice money to distribute. Gave a lot of it to his fellow House members. You don't have to say too much about this when this happens. You get $10,000 to help with your campaign. Do you owe anything back in return? The same legislator ended up serving 2 terms as Speaker of the House. This is not unique. Here we come to disclosure. We're near the bottom in conflict of interest disclosure. Now, you may have talked about financial disclosure. We've got 2 different kinds of disclosure requirements. The conflict of interest requirements are very minimal. The Center for Public Integrity gave us an F. Utah ranked 47th in the nation for making basic information available about the legislator's income, assets, and potential conflicts of interest. We got 9.5 points out of 100. We had very, very inadequate financial disclosure. We got another report that came in a year or so later. We got a D-. UCLA School of Law and the California Voter Foundation gave us a D- for essentially the same thing, and I think we've made some very minor improvement in our disclosure over the 2 years between the 2. So is the current system working? Well, this is what happened because of pressure, because of all the attention paid to ethical lapses. We had over 30 bills introduced. Most of them never made it out of Rules Committee. They really didn't go anywhere. A few passed. We had about 4 bills that passed. Their impact is limited. I've already mentioned the major loophole in the lobbying provision that was passed. The legislature decided to appoint a joint ethics committee of the House and Senate, which has been meeting and so far has not been able to do anything. And now that we've come out with our initiative, they may do a little something. We don't know what. But they think our initiative is much stronger than what we think they were planning to do. So it's a little uncertain, but they have yet to agree on anything, but they may come in with something before the session starts. Here's the Deseret News editorializing. There are occasions when lawmakers bent on a particular philosophy refuse to do the bidding of the people. For instance, state lawmakers either can't or won't institute meaningful legislative ethics reforms despite years of public opinion polls and other measures that tell us Utahns clearly want them. The polls show overwhelming support for the kind of efforts that we're engaged in. But the legislature has just been putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. They're paying a little more attention now because we've got a ballot initiative. Is the current system working? Ogden Standard Examiner said, nope, this is still a D in terms of the efforts that the legislature went through last session. Tribune said, well, they took baby steps. City Weekly said, toothless reform. So, where are we? We're still at the back of the pack. We're still without campaign limitations. We're still without an independent ethics commission. And Alan's going to describe this to you, but I should say, maybe we can discuss more fully when we get to questions and answers what the current financial disclosure requirements are. Don't let me forget, okay? Don't you like the Ogden Standard Examiner? This is Calvin Grondal. Okay, Alan, come see if your thumb works better than mine.
My name's Alan Smith, and I'm an attorney from Salt Lake City in private practice, and I